All right. Jermell Charlo responds to Errol Spence Jr. versus Canelo Alvarez fight talks, and he doesn't sound too motivated by it. In fact, he says that Canelo Alvarez is Jermall Charlo's lunch meat. Let's talk about that because there's something real true about it and also something real unfortunate about it at the same time. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So Canelo Alvarez fights Callum Smith this weekend in San Antonio, Texas at the Alamo Dome. In preparation for that fight, there's a lot of promotional events going on. Canelo Alvarez was asked by Marcus Villegas of Fight Hub. Definitely go check out the interview on Fight Hub. It's a very good channel. Also, follow me on Instagram and follow me on Twitter. But go check out that article, the interview with Canelo Alvarez. And in that interview, Marcus Villegas asked him, "Are you open to an Errol Spence Jr. fight?" Canelo Alvarez said yes to that. He also asked, would Canelo Alvarez be willing to move down from 168 pounds to 160 pounds to fight Errol Spence Jr. at 160? The reason that the question was asked that way is because Errol Spence himself said that he would like a Canelo Alvarez fight and that he would be able and be willing to fight Canelo as high as 160 pounds. So with that, it looks like there's a very serious chance for that fight to take place. And it's a reason, and there's a bunch of different reasons for it, but primarily the biggest reason is that it's probably the biggest fight in boxing. When you look at Canelo Alvarez and Canelo Alvarez's fan base, you look at specifically Errol Spence Jr.'s fan base and his fan base in Texas, the fact that you bring the Black American demographic and the Mexican demographic together in a fight with, two different, intermixed, but somewhat distinct fan bases come together. The common knowledge in boxing is that you get a big mega fight. And I do believe that's the case with Canelo Alvarez and Errol Spence Jr. In fact, I believe that Errol Spence Jr. is the absolute best option financially and competition-wise for Canelo Alvarez. So I've said this for at least a year, definitely since after the Mikey Garcia fight, that this fight is something that more than likely is destined to take place. However, just because it's the biggest fight doesn't mean that it's the best fight, because it's not. The best fight for Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, the best fight, the number one fight that I want to see from Canelo Alvarez is Canelo Alvarez versus Jermall Charlo. Similarly, the fight that I want is the best fight for me to see that I believe that I could see right now from Errol Spence as an Errol Spence Jr. fan is the Terence Crawford fight. The Terence Crawford fight is a better fight than the Errol Spence Canelo fight because these guys are both at welterweights, and this is something that, if everything was right in the world, should happen first before the Errol Spence Canelo fight, and let that be like a buildup, or the Terence Crawford Canelo fight if that's what happens. But that's the better fight. It's just not the bigger fight. Again, Jermall Charlo, Canelo Alvarez, the better fight, not the bigger fight. Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, the better fight, not the bigger fight. And in this scenario, in the scenario that we're in right now, a lot of people are going to go for the bigger fight, especially somebody in the scenario of Canelo Alvarez, where Canelo Alvarez is really doesn't have any bigger name to fight. And the guys that he would fight that are somewhat close to that are less money, same risk, or less money, more risk. For example, the number one guy that we just talked about, Jermall Charlo. Jermall Charlo is a situation with Canelo Alvarez where he's significantly bigger than Errol Spence Jr. He's significantly stronger than Errol Spence Jr. He is I'm not quite sure if he's as skilled as Errol Spence Jr., but his championship pedigree is serious. That is a tough fight for Canelo Alvarez, and I don't think that Canelo Alvarez wouldn't take that fight with Jermall Charlo. I don't believe that he would not take that fight. However, I do believe that people around him, and definitely Oscar De La Hoya before that, were steering him away from that. And even in this interview where Marcus Villegas is talking with Canelo Alvarez, Marcus Villegas asked about Canelo Alvarez. He never asked about Jermall Charlo. So it's not even as if Canelo Alvarez is going to be getting a lot of pressure from the mainstream media to fight Jermall Charlo. And my belief in that is that these guys see something that might look like a bit of a soft touch for Canelo Alvarez, right? Because Canelo Alvarez is 2 weight classes above him. One guy's at 147, the other guy's at 168. Canelo really is a 160-pounder. So I don't really even think that Canelo Alvarez is going down in weight to fight Errol Spence Jr. Canelo Alvarez is what I believe is fighting at 168 pounds so that he doesn't have to stress out his body and he doesn't have to go through that extra drama that it takes to fight at a weight class where you're not comfortable, right? Where you have to come down in weight. And Canelo can pick his opponents, so it doesn't really make a difference to him. Like this Callum Smith fight that's coming up, I have a lot of people coming to my comment sections talking about, well, look how tall he is. Look how tall he is. Look how tall he is. Man, I cannot believe I was just about to go into a British accent to insult Canelo Alvarez. That's how used to and how anxious I am to make this video about Eddie Hearn. Let me get a sip. And this Hershey's cup is not sponsored. Not at all. I just like Hershey's. And that is not cocoa. That is coffee. Because this video is being made right about 5:30 in the morning. So please understand, dog, we got to keep awake. Now, anyway, sorry about that. Had to take that little brief respite. So pretty much, yeah, that's the scenario, man. That yes, I would much rather see the Jermall Charlo fight, but I don't even know whether or not it makes any real sense to even talk about it and push them, because this Errol Spence Jr. fight is the most likely thing to happen, man. It's just so much money on the table for both guys. It's a scenario. It's dang near a win-win scenario for Errol Spence Jr. And I'm telling you, there is a real chance that Errol Spence Jr. can beat Canelo Alvarez, and I think that Canelo Alvarez might be missing that. Now, because Canelo Alvarez I don't think it's impossible to fall in love with your own schemes. So Canelo goes up to 168 pounds, and he's beating bigger guys. So he might think, oh yeah, me moving down to 160 to get this smaller guy, yeah, I'm just gonna bowl over him. He's too little for me. Look at what I'm doing to these bigger guys. But as Sean Porter said when he talked about the 147 pounders moving up to 154, that you have a different dimension. Canelo's gonna have to face a different dimension with Errol Spence Jr. than he had with guys like Callum Smith, guys like Sergey Kovalev, bigger guys that are significantly slower, right? Significantly slower feet, significantly slower hands. They are not fresh in their careers, and they're nowhere near as talented as Errol Spence. So if he could think this, looking at the size of Errol Spence, looking at that, and looking at the big guys that he beats, that's somehow going to mean that this is going to be, some real easy fight for him, I'm telling you, man, the guy is going to be wrong about that. And I do believe, now I favor Canelo Alvarez to win the Errol Spence Jr. fight, primarily because of this. Because Errol Spence Jr. does not knock out Canelo. Canelo's going to get the scorecard. He's going to win on the scorecards. Because boxing is definitely stacked up behind Canelo Alvarez, as they do when they get that golden boy that they really, really want. But that's my take on the scenario. Personally, I want to see Canelo Alvarez fight Jermall Charlo. That's what I want to see. I want to see Errol Spence Jr. fight Terence Crawford. That's what I want to see. But even when you look at Terence Crawford and how Terence Crawford is negotiating with Errol Spence Jr. as if this is some 50, I cannot believe I did not turn this computer off before I did this. Anyway, because now I got this stuff popping up. Anyway, if Terence Crawford believes that fight somehow, some way is some 50-50 split fight on the revenue and he doesn't need him for his resume, dude, Terence, just go look over there what Canelo said he wants to do with Errol. You know you're not on Canelo Alvarez's level, so please stop acting like you're on Errol's, because quite honestly, popularity-wise, as far as the direction that his career is going, Terence Crawford got the belts. Errol Spence got the career, and that's just pretty much what is going on. If Terence wants to stop Errol from just going all the way up to the heavens and leaving him behind him, he should do everything that he needs to do to make that fight. But I don't think that he'll do it. That's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.